I don't want to do anything specifically in business or finance or anything like that. I want to be able to, get my hands dirty and help people and, really support a cause that I'm, kind of driven to.
Welcome to Social Situation, a podcast where we chat with and celebrate leaders challenging the status quo and creating innovations in social impact. Join us for conversations around the current and future state of social impact, the value of closing the gap between for-profits and nonprofits, and the importance of taking values-informed risks in order to create the greatest impact. On this episode, we'll dive into the world of professional sports and impact by speaking with Tony Croslin, who has worked on community partnerships and events for Major League Baseball, the Cincinnati Reds, the Kansas City Chiefs, and most recently as community engagement manager with the New York Mets. We'll talk about how major sports teams work with their communities, trends in the market, and job hunting in the current social impact landscape.
I'm Trevor Loke.
And I'm Erin Mogul.
And this is Social Situation.
Trevor, welcome to Social Situation, episode 2.
Hello, Erin. We are on a roll. I'm energized after our great conversation with Priya Parak. This momentum has me feeling a little bit sporty, which is totally on theme for our episode. We've recently watched the Super Bowl. We're approaching the end of hockey and basketball season. So, Erin, 2 questions for you today. Did you watch the Super Bowl, and was it for the game or the ads and the halftime show?
That's a great question, Trevor. And I have to say, I'm not the biggest football fan, but I always watch the Super Bowl because I love the ads and I love the halftime show. I find the ads to be really inspiring and pull on those heartstrings. And the halftime show was amazing. I love Usher, and that energy was so electric. Definitely was worth me watching however many hours of football to get that. But how about you? Did you enjoy the game?
Yeah, I'm also not typically a football watcher or fan, but my family has been into, NFL football and specifically the Kansas City Chiefs for a while. And so the fact that they won yet another year was definitely well celebrated in the family. My dad's a big Patrick Mahomes fan and was wearing his Kansas City Chiefs jersey as we watched the game together, which was lots of fun.
I love that. That sounds like an awesome time with your family. I'm so glad you all had that special time together. It makes me think about myself growing up and watching sports. Football wasn't the biggest thing for us, but something that has always been the Olympics. So I had the opportunity actually to go to the Olympics in person a couple times, which was just amazing. And it's something we get really excited for. I think it's the coming together of countries. That camaraderie in sport is really inspiring. And I always get so excited watching the opening ceremonies. And I think it's such a special moment every 2 years, including both the winter and summer. So something I definitely look forward to. But what about you? Tell me more about kind of your journey with sport and how that led you into your career today.
I fully agree, first of all, with everything you just said about the Olympics. I'm also a huge fan, and the mission itself of bringing the international community together, as you say, and the idea of the 5 rings representing the diversity of peoples and our planet is a needed message, definitely more than ever. And hockey was my pathway into social impact because I was playing hockey growing up, and local sports teams are a huge part of fundraising for local charities, and our team was no different. And so the charity that I was raising money for ended up hiring me as a fundraiser, and my career kind of went on from that point in time. But, I always remember it was my hockey roots that actually got me into social impact in the first place. And really what got me into hockey was growing up as a kid watching the Vancouver Canucks, which as an organization have been embracing diversity, local charitable outreach. They have a local charitable foundation working with kids with autism, as well as the Canuck Place Children's Hospice. So an inspiring community-oriented team that has really gotten me inspired and been a North Star for what social impact can look like.
Love that, Trevor. It is so cool to hear how sports are really what got you into the world of all things philanthropy and social impact. I think that sports are so powerful for bringing people together, for putting aside differences, for learning to work as a team, building resilience. And I think that's great that sports have gotten you into the world of giving back and supporting the greater community. There's so much opportunity there. And I feel like we could talk about this all day, but we do need to take a short break. And when we're back, we'll be joined by Tony Croslin, Tony has 9 years of experience working for professional sports teams in Major League Baseball and the National Football League in social impact focused roles. When we come back, Tony will join us from his new home in Charlotte, North Carolina. Stay tuned.
$60 billion is being given by companies to nonprofits in 2024 to maximize regulatory benefits and manage reputation for employees and customers. Some companies are struggling. The rest are using OrgMatch because OrgMatch optimizes this process, saving time and money required in due diligence, research, and administration, while increasing confidence in the impact and investment earned. That's why community investment teams around the world are trusting OrgMatch to get the job done. Find out for yourself by going to orgmatch.com. That's ORGMATCH.com to get started now for free.
So Tony and I met while serving on the executive committee of Corporate Volunteers of New York, which is a coalition of major corporations committed to advancing CSR and volunteerism. Tony is a foundation and social impact professional and most recently served as the manager of community engagement at the New York Mets. We are so thrilled to have him join us today. Welcome, Tony. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Erin and Trevor.
We're just so thrilled to have you on the show today. And it's actually the first time you and I have met. But Erin has, of course, told me a lot of amazing things about you. And I've looked at your amazing background, especially in the realm of sports, which I'm really excited to talk to you about today. And I know, one of your recent roles, you worked for a long time with the New York Mets, and I'm a fan of sports and philanthropy. So I'm over the moon about this conversation and what we can get into today. And so maybe just starting out, how did you first get into CSR? And if I understand correctly, you had been working in major sports prior to CSR.
Thank you guys for having me. This is great. And yeah, so it kind of started off while I was in college. I got a chance to volunteer with a couple of organizations. I always was interested in the business behind sports. We would see, you would see commercials during the Super Bowl, and I would think how did Coca-Cola get that? I would start to think of that when I was a little bit younger, and I always liked helping people and volunteering. So once it came to my attention that, there's roles out there that kind of combine both sports and helping people, I was hooked. So I started by having an opportunity with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I did an internship there in community, and it was everything I thought it was. Going out in the community, planting trees, going into schools, everything that we love about CSR. And it sort of just kind of enhanced my interest in it. And I was able to, get a position with New York Mets, and it's been the same thing there. So it's just, sort of just been a love for sports and giving back. And it's kind of led me to who I am today.
Oh, that's really cool. And approaching this from the sports angle, what do you think major sports are doing that's different from how you look at, other CSR folks in the industry? And obviously you have a lot of peers that are in non-sports roles in CSR. So what are kind of some of the differences that come up?
I would say the biggest thing that comes to my mind is the platform that sports has. It may be similar to, large, financial corporations in terms of platform, but, when you go into a school, not everyone's wearing, this financial services shirt all over the place. But, when we would go into schools at the New York Mets, you would have teachers and kids dressed in blue and orange. And it was, you were already part of that community in one way, and you wanted to kind of drive, your affiliation even more in a different way. So, I think what's unique about sports is that there's this unmatched platform that sports has with their connection to their fans and their community. So that's really cool to be a part of. You don't have to necessarily build more affiliations and affinity for the group, but also you have a really good chance to really strengthen it if you need to.
Just a quick follow-up from that. To your point, you've got this amazing platform. You've got all of these fans who are, dedicated and loyal to the team. And you've got these built-in influencers in the athletes that you're working with. So how do you involve the athletes in CSR? And, is it as, how easy is it to engage them? And what does that look like?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing to know is, winning comes first in sports. But you want to be able to find time that one works for them, but you also want to find opportunities that that really, catches their interest. There's certain players, for example, that, are a little bit more drawn to helping military and first responders, while you have others that are a little bit more drawn to going into schools, while others want to kind of just play baseball with kids, right? So you can't take one player that, has a specific interest and then, put a square peg in a round hole and have them do something else, because it's not going to be as productive as you think. There's been times where, we've kind of plucked a player and put them somewhere and where we're like, that was kind of a waste in a way. But I think you just find it's finding the middle ground, finding what, what they like to do, and then kind of enhancing it. So it's basically just being able to find the solution that best fits for them, so that, they are comfortable, because at the end of the day, people know those people, not us. So you want to make sure that they're comfortable, but you want to make sure that you're setting them up for success.
I think what's interesting about your work in kind of conjunction between sports and philanthropy is that the athletes are your employees, right? So when we think about employee volunteerism, charitable giving, those are your athletes that are getting out there, and they are the influencers. They're well known. They are these figures that everybody recognizes. So they have this incredible platform. But I'm wondering too, so much about community engagement, employee engagement is how we measure success. And of course, success is winning for athletes, as you've said, which we all can appreciate. But there's also the success of the CSR team and those sort of philanthropic efforts. So how do we measure success, and how do we measure impact, and what does that look like? And that can look different from one company to the next, from one sector to the next. So I'm curious what that has looked like for you in the realm of professional sports.
Even across not necessarily sports, but all industries, I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. And I think what's sort of caught us up a little bit is, we would do a program, right? And we would have all this data. We would have, Title I schools and demographics and ages and all this type of stuff. And then we're like, okay, now what do we do with it? So I think the important thing about measuring success to me is being able to set goals for yourself first and foremost. And then you can sort of tailor what you're looking for off of that. So when I set up an event, whether, in schools or something like that, I want to hit 120 schools, for example. And I want to make sure that 60% of those schools are Title I status, and 75% of those schools have students, that are free and reduced lunch eligible, et cetera. So being able to set it up in advance and then going back and then tracking those measurements, then that's how you can know that you've hit your success points. And that way you can bring it back to supervisors and executive leadership and say, hey, this was our goal for this program. These were the numbers, and these are our final numbers. So I think just overall is just finding, having goals set in advance.
I'd love to kind of flip it for a second and talk about the athletes and kind of their experience, because at the end of the day, this is their employee engagement. And I'm sure there are employees that are, the office staff that are getting in on these community service opportunities as well. But for the athletes, what do these opportunities feel like for them? What sort of feedback do you get about the impact of that experience on them as a person, on them as an athlete, as an employee of the team, et cetera?
Like I mentioned, so first things first is making sure that they have an interest in what you're going to make them do. But then before they go into it, you want to kind of give them the background to the situation as well. And then again, you just want to set them up for as much success as possible. You want to make sure that they're not getting like overwhelmed with the kids or all these different things that kind of play into it. Because like you mentioned, there's an influencer in your school, right? We've had people who've, led MLB in home runs and have won, awards from MLB, right? And then you bring them into a school, all these kids are going to be like, whoa, this is crazy. So definitely making sure that it's, you want them to be able to digest it and not be like crazy overwhelmed. And the more you do that, the more impact that you're going to have. And a lot of the times it's the kids are fine with it. They're like, oh, I'd rather see this big baseball mascot head, Mr. Met. But it's the teachers and stuff sometimes you got to worry about. It's always the parents and the teachers. But I think the biggest thing is same thing with everything, whether you're setting up volunteer engagements for your entire company. You want to do something where people are going to feel like they're making an impact. They're going to feel like they're doing something important. And ultimately at the end of the day, whatever we do, it's something, whatever situation we put our athletes into, it's not anything that we wouldn't do ourselves. So, we're going to go into the school, and then they're just kind of an add-on component. Obviously, they're kind of, the biggest piece of it, but we never, tell any group that we're going to actually have a player there, because just in case, something happens. But I think that's the biggest thing, is just being able to, let them know that they're making a difference in the community, and that they have this platform that no one else has. Like, they're gifted and they're blessed with this platform. And then you just try to get them to understand how important and how vital that is. And then hopefully continue to help them build their personal brand by giving back to the community.
You were in your role with the New York Mets for over 7 years, which is definitely longer than I've ever held a job for. So very well done. And I appreciate your dedication to the organization. But, 7 years is a long time, especially in this space. I mean, we've seen words change. We're now using terms like ESG and social impact that we probably weren't using when you started in that role. And I'm wondering, what are some of the changes you've seen, kind of in the CSR space, over your tenure, and maybe to expand on it, like, where do you see things kind of going?
In the past 7 years, there's been a whole bunch of new acronyms that kind of, popped up and kind of are new and trendy. When I started, D&I unfortunately wasn't as important and prevalent as it has always should been, right? Same thing with ESG, those types of things. But especially in the sports space, I think the sports space is a couple of steps behind other groups when they can have, a little bit more capital kind of put behind for more ESG related, sustainability related, or international related issues. And we kind of focused on, what we would do best. But yeah, like you mentioned, I think the growth of what social impact has been able to offer is amazing. And I think the biggest thing that I've been able to see is the growth of analytics in the space. When I started there, I don't recall ever there being too many analytics based, focuses or goals that you kind of set for yourself, 7 years ago. But, the past few years, all I've done is think, X amount of this, percentages, amount of schools, numbers. And it's just been constantly numbers, which obviously is very, very important, especially if you want buy-in from ownership, executive leadership, the board, et cetera. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed is, more prevalence with, being able to restructure data and mining this, and then kind of turning it back to, let the revenue generating side know that, hey, we're here and we're doing a lot of really good things for our community.
I love that. And I always like to say, although CSR is not inherently revenue generating, it most certainly is revenue generating, right? Like, it is such a key part of a business. It's attracting and retaining employees. It is attracting customers. It's doing so much for the community, et cetera. We could go on and have a whole conversation around that. So I appreciate you mentioning that. But I want to take a step back here for a second, Tony. So obviously you've had such a successful career in the CSR space. You've worked across different professional sports teams, and you've really gotten engaged in the community and gotten athletes engaged in the community. And I'd love to hear, what some of the standout moments have looked like for you in your time in this space. If there's anything in particular that really stands out, or something that's memorable that's happened to you personally while doing this sort of work.
I think one of the biggest things is being able to, I was very grateful that I've always had an opportunity to create a program from scratch and kind of try it out, give it a trial run. And there was a program that I created called Sandlot Stars. And it's essentially a program where we donate brand new baseball and softball equipment all over the New York City community and all the other communities where our affiliates are in, Syracuse, Dominican Republic. And this past year also, we went to Puerto Rico as well. So being able to, I started that program back in 2018. And basically I was like, we should donate baseball equipment. We're a baseball team, right? Like, what better way to be in the community and do things than focus on our bread and butter, which is baseball, right? So, and it was met with a lot of great positive feedback. And then every year, more and more money would filter into our foundation, and it would be restricted specifically for this program. And, over $800,000 later, over 15,000 kids, et cetera. And it's all brand new baseball and softball equipment. So that's one of those programs where, it started by just an idea. And then over time, I was able to kind of curate, cultivate and grow it and nurture it, and be able to track data and metrics along the way, and really show its growth along the way. So
that's so awesome to see the impact that you're having on young people, to bring them the opportunity to engage in the sport that, your entire job, was all about, is awesome. And to see the legacy that you've, left with this program being something that's ongoing, that's so cool. And I'm sure the athletes loved, just seeing that more and more young people were getting excited about baseball and softball. So very cool to hear that. And I want to talk about careers in the broader social impact space for a second, or, CSR, of course, included. So part of the work that I do is coach individuals that want to work in this sector or are transitioning into this sector. You've obviously made it in the CSR world and have made such an impact. And I'm curious what advice you would have for job seekers that want to do work similar to what you've done.
Yeah, I would say, Erin, I think one of the biggest things people can do is, reach out to like-minded individuals, whether it's you two, and, or, just talk to people in general, just kind of connect with people and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm into. This is what I want to do. And, knowing you're a CSR professional, you want to help people. So if someone reaches out on LinkedIn, you're like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to probably reach back out to this person. So it's little things like that, setting yourself apart and just learning as much as possible about it. As Trevor mentioned earlier, that, it's an ongoing, ever changing, part of a business, and being able to sort of adapt and, follow the trends as you go along. But ultimately at the end of the day, it's a lot of, project management, solutions, oriented positions, a lot of details, and, it's a big part of the business. And, anybody who's willing and interested to be a part of it, I would absolutely encourage a career in CSR.
That's awesome. Super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that would love to have a job like you've had. And I'm curious too, Tony, how did you get your start, or your interest in giving back and philanthropy and community engagement? Was this something you were always passionate about as a young person, or did you grow this interest once you got into the professional space? Curious what Tony's giving back origin story looks like.
You know what? I think I happened to volunteer for, community service while I was in college one time. And it's just something about it was really, really cool. I volunteered at a 5K fundraising race. And I just thought that was so cool that people come out and they ran, I think it was the March of Dimes, fundraising race in downtown Cincinnati. And, it was really cool to see all these people running. And I was thinking, like, all these people paid money and donated money to be a part of this. Like, not only are you doing something kind of health and wellness related, which obviously I was into, but you're also, getting all these people together. You have thousands of people here all on the same side, wanting to do the same thing and, supporting the same cause. And I think just from there, it kind of triggered my brain. And I thought, I don't want to do anything specifically in business or finance or anything like that. I want to be able to, get my hands dirty and help people and, really support a cause that I'm, kind of driven to. So that's kind of how it started. And I've been fortunate enough to hold positions in CSR ever since.
That's awesome. Trevor and I were talking before this conversation about how cool it is that you've tied your passion together with your professional interests. How cool to be able to do both at the same time. So we're both very jealous and love that that's been your path.
Yeah, it's making me rethink my own path, actually. I was like, you can do that? No, that's crazy. No, but you've worked with some incredible teams. And you live in some amazing cities. I've seen, Kansas City, Cincinnati, New York, you're now in Charlotte. So big question is, how do you choose who to root for?
I am a diehard Cincinnati Bengals and Cincinnati Reds fan. That never really went away. It was very tricky to watch the Reds versus the Mets play, because on one hand you're like, this is my true affinity, but then also it's a team that paid me money. So I just remember, actually, it's funny you brought that up. I remember when I was in 5th grade, I had all A's, and I got mailed to me 2 Reds tickets because my school was part of their program that the Reds were having, where anybody who had straight A's got 2 Reds tickets. And for me, I was in my head, I was in fifth grade. I was like, wow, I can get incentivized to like be good at school, and I get tickets. So that always stuck with me too. And that kind of triggers back to my origin story. But yeah, Cincinnati through and through. I do have a small affinity for the Kansas City Chiefs and now the Mets. But it's the Cincinnati Bengals were on the rise before my guy Joe Burrow got injured. But yeah, I gotta stay true to my Ohio folk. We're very loyal to ourselves. We don't know why, but we're very loyal.
I love that, Tony, and yeah, I very much appreciate that. I'm also, loyal, long-suffering fan of many sports. None of my teams are champions yet, but like you, I see the rise coming. So, on that note, just really want to thank you for your time today. It's been such a pleasure to be able to dive deeper on these topics. Learning more about major sports, learning more about the navigation of your professional career in what is really unique and exciting. And I'm just really excited to see where you end up next, Tony. So, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys very much for having me. I think what you're doing here is great, and keep doing what you're doing, Erin and Trevor. And I'm always here to help support you guys. So thank you guys very much for the opportunity.
And everyone should follow, connect with Tony Croslin on LinkedIn to talk about all things CSR, social impact, employee engagement. And we will see you all on the next one. Thank you for being here. Looking to make an impact, but not sure where to start? Elevate Social Impact, a purpose-driven consulting and coaching practice, helps companies develop their CSR strategies and embed a culture of giving back into their brand. And they guide individuals looking for fulfilling careers in social impact. Whether you're wanting to grow your company's give back efforts or find values alignment and make a greater difference through your work, Elevate Social Impact is excited to equip you with the knowledge, resources, and tools that you need to get started. Check out elevatesocialimpact.com today to learn more.
Well, welcome back. It's time for us to share what's on our mind. Erin, what is on your mind today?
That is a great question, Trevor. And it's been a really busy time for me. I actually recently relocated, as you know, Trevor, from New York City to Los Angeles, and it's just been so busy. But the move has taught me a lot. And so that's kind of what I wanted to share today is, this kind of idea of change and the idea of building community, which I am, such a huge proponent of. And one thing I'll say that I like to think about a lot too, something actually my mom has always taught me is to do one good deed a day. So, if we think about what a deed is, it could be something as small as holding the door for the person behind you, maybe in your apartment building, you're getting on the elevator, making sure you're holding that elevator door. So I think my major takeaways with this move is, that community is key. Change is positive. There's so much opportunity and growth that comes with change. And that, if we all are out there doing one good deed a day, one small act of kindness, it will just be better for, the entire community around us, and we'll feel really great as a result as well. So that's my my long-winded answer to your question, Trevor, but I'd love to know what's been on your mind recently.
I love that answer, Erin. And okay, I guess I'll get to my recommendation, which I think builds really nicely off of what you just said. When we are facing these challenges, when we're not able to, to fully take the time for ourselves, it's great to be able to look to others and the communities we have. My recommendation comes from the reprieve that I take when I'm feeling down or lost in the world, which is movies. And a movie I watched recently is called Bobby Wine, the People's President, which is on Disney Plus for any subscribers out there. People may have heard of this film. It was recently nominated up for an Oscar this year in the Best Documentary category. And the story follows Ugandan Afrobeats musician turned politician Bobby Wine, who founds a new political party, the National Unity Platform, in Uganda. And for folks that don't know, Yoweri Museveni has been the president of Uganda for 40 years. And, originally was a freedom fighter, against corruption and against colonialism, has led a very brutal regime that has oppressed political opponents, including Bobby Wine, which the story gets into. And at a time when we're experiencing a lot of harshness in the world, a lot of disagreement and division, Bobby Wine to me is the leader we need right now. He speaks a clear message about people's empowerment, about democracy, about facing impossible challenges with confidence and bravery. He said his greatest compliment in life was being compared to Alexei Navalny, who, as we know, was murdered recently by the Putin regime. And, Russians are facing that oppression every day, as are Ugandans, are as many people in the world. And the message I want to leave listeners with today comes from a song that Bobby Wine wrote called Freedom. And in the song, he asks in his lyrics, he says, question, what was the purpose of the liberation when we can't have a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the Constitution when the government disrespects the Constitution? Where is my freedom of expression when you charge me because of my expression? Look what you're doing to the nation. What are you teaching the future generation? And, Bobby Wine is under house arrest today in Uganda after having returned to his home country, after living in the United States and other places, fleeing the persecution. And so my hope is that our listeners can be inspired by Bobby's message and other freedom fighters around the world who are standing up in the face of corruption and oppression to fight for democracy and human rights, the freedom for all peoples to live freely. Erin, thank you very much for today in this episode. It was such a great conversation. I'm so thankful to be able to do this with you. Social Situation is co-hosted by me, Trevor Loke, the amazing Erin Mogul, and is presented by Elevate Social Impact and Workmatch. Editing is by Tristan Thompson, with production support by Mark Rathgaber. New episodes are released on the second Thursday of each month. You can visit socialsituationpodcast.com to learn more or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.